Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Rosefellow's Podcast. My name is Mike Jager, and to my left, I have my partner, Tsoumas, and to my right, Kristopher Parent, our Vice President of Development. So thank you both for being with us, and thank you all for tuning in. Today's podcast will be focused on Montreal, our beautiful city where we were all born and raised. Very excited to chat about this. Gentlemen, what are some of the great things you see in Montreal?
Well, Montreal itself is one of, in my opinion, probably the greatest, important city in North America. You look at the history of Montreal, how it started out. I'm not going to get into a history lesson here, but you go over, the last few centuries and how it became such an important maritime hub across all of North America. And then you look at what happened, I'll bring us a little back, from the 1920s, where the United States had the no liquor ban, and how that actually made Montreal, at that point, the New York city of all of North America. It became the most important hub everywhere. The good and the bad. The good was evidently, if you have any chance to look at any of these YouTube videos of Montreal in the 30s and 40s, you'd lose your mind. All the Hollywood stars, all the businesses, the amount of the vibrant nature of our city. Then there was obviously the criminal aspect that joined that, and then you bring us all the way up until the 70s, where Montreal was effectively the biggest city in Canada. Today, Montreal, though, in my view, is the greatest city in Canada.
I can't agree more. I love my city. I love Montreal. I think one aspect that we forget, because as residents of Montreal, is that we're on an island. And we're a very select few international cities are actually islands. You think about Tokyo, Sydney, and that makes it remarkable by the fact we're surrounded by water, beautiful landscapes, and such a diversity in the development of the town. So you have really a downtown core. You go more towards the west, you have more green spaces, large parks. Montreal, which is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful parks in the world that I've seen, a municipal park, which was, interestingly enough, designed by the same landscape architect that designed Central Park, which is probably my second favorite park that I've seen in the world. So the fact that it's an island, I find that's really special too, and it just brings the different cultures together, right? That island aspect, right? With all our diversity and the different cultures that we have, and that energy that comes out of it. I just find there's not many places in the world that you find that.
Absolutely. That European flavor that we have here can't be found anywhere else in North America. I think that's what distinguishes us. We've had so many incredible festivals. In the past we had Just for Laughs, and now we have the Jazz Festival. We still have the Grand Prix. So many amazing things that attract people to Montreal. That the diversity, like you mentioned, our culture makes us proud Montrealers.
One last point. You hear about why would people move to Montreal. I always challenge people to ask this question, because we've all been fortunate in the last few years to having been able to travel effectively all around the world. How many cities can you honestly say you could walk downtown at 2:30 in the morning with your wife or your spouse and your children and not be scared? I have not seen one except Montreal, and that's a testament to our city.
Absolutely. And you know what? How proud are you as parents to be able to say your kids can speak at the very least two languages? It's rare where you can speak. It's common practice, speak English and French. And how important is that when you travel to other parts of the world? I'm proud that my kids go to a French school and speak English at home, because they're perfectly bilingual, and that's because we live in Quebec.
It's a great town. It's funny that we're doing this podcast today, because last week my wife and I were saying, okay, what do we do for the summer holidays? We're really last minute this year. And it came to us, we're like, well, why don't we enjoy Montreal? We haven't done that very often. We have our go-to places, right? Montreal, we love to go to the Chantalon Market. We love to go to the Atwater Market, Mont-Royal. But we said, why don't we just, with the kids, really live Montreal? We've done it with other towns, but let's do it with our hometown. And that's what we're doing. So we put a whole list of activities we're going to do during the
Be
holidays.
a tourist in your own city.
Be a tourist in your own
Yep.
city, exactly. And there's so much to do.
There is. Now, if we look at the business landscape of Montreal, what do we see as the pros and cons of Montreal?
I will speak on, we'll talk about on the technology side. So in my view, in the 90s or early 2000s, the city of Montreal put in some form of tax abatements that brought in the gaming industry. That was a huge success. And I think now we're actually seeing the long-term effects of it, where the people who started in the gaming industry have actually now morphed into the AI technology side of it. And Montreal has clearly become one of the most important cities on a technological level, on an employee-based level for this whole industry. So I think on that side, Montreal is probably maybe the top in all of North America.
I would say that Montreal, one thing that over the years, they've been very good at setting visions. If we go back to Maire Drapeau and the visions that he had to put Montreal on the global stage with Expo and the Olympics, that generated a lot of development. Some can be controversial, but in overall, it really helped put Montreal on the global stage. And I look at today, Montreal just came out with their new land use mobility plan, the vision for 2050. It's a remarkable plan. I mean, it has these great initiatives in fostering development in different areas of Montreal, environmental stewardship, sustainability. Phenomenal plan. The question is, will there be enough leadership to foster the support for these major projects? Or will it become a document that's going to be put on a shelf? Are we going to be able to generate economic development and put all the winning conditions to generate economic development so that this great vision can come forward like it's done in the past? It was done in the past. We've done some great things. Will we be able to do it in the next 10, 15 years?
Do you think as a city we're doing enough to welcome foreign business into our province?
I'll say this is almost in two parts. So on a political side, I know we have Investissement Québec. We have all of these governmental entities that exist to bring in. I actually think they've done relatively a good job. You start seeing, the battery companies that are coming in, the AI technology companies, all of these new companies are coming in. They didn't come in out of nowhere. These are clearly initiatives done by these governmental bodies. So I think they've done a good job on that. Where I believe the government has failed, and again, I say this without knowing all the facts, is I see it on the day-to-day. I've heard of companies who've come in, who've opened up enterprises here and have actually left because they were told they had to redo their whole website in French. Yet still, I know for a fact, they kept a distribution center in the South Shore of Montreal so they could still do the distribution. So they lost a whole wing of business. And that's where I think we've got to learn how to incorporate our beliefs and our values with a fast-moving world, a technology world.
I couldn't agree more. I find sometimes we get bogged down in the details and not see the big picture, especially when it is to foster business in Montreal. And we get tangled up in certain bureaucracies or technicalities to get a permit and make things very difficult. When you look at the big picture, hey, this could bring employment. This could bring more workers. They're going to make our coffee shops, our businesses thrive. It's going to give more money to the city to invest in the green spaces and all the wonderful projects they want to do. I think we've got to move away from the little details that just slow things down and make it complicated. Because when you look at other towns on the international stage, they welcome business. They're like, hey, come here. We're going to make it happen. It doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. No. There's guidelines to keep quality, but we're going to support you. We're going to help you. We want this to happen. I think we have to have that big picture mentality, that the big objective in mind.
Here's one example that really, I'll say, irked me. Every year we know that the Formula One's here. It is, in my opinion, the single most important event for the city. There's buzz, there's celebrities, people come in, there's action. There's actually a vibe in the city where even the residents of Montreal are happy. There's a reason for them to go downtown. And I understand, repairing all the roads for one weekend is impossible. But I would say be accommodating. Everybody's looking at your city. Don't have orange cones everywhere. Don't close roads that don't need to be closed. Or if you have to, make sure everybody's aware that for that weekend, it needs to be ready. And I think sometimes these are the things that, I know it's difficult. Guys, you got to figure it out. And I know of many examples where people just turned around this weekend, the past few weekends, because they just couldn't park. They couldn't get downtown. Roads were closed. It wasn't fun.
It was easy back in the day when we were the only race in North America. Montreal, we have competition. Miami has a race. Las Vegas has a race. There's other states that have their own races. We have to take it a step up. And then on the business side of things, I mentioned it earlier. We have to welcome these companies. Again, the ownership groups probably don't speak French. That's okay, because the employees that they will hire in our province will be French-speaking employees, and those are tens of thousands of jobs that will go to French-speaking people, that they be residents, that they be immigrants. These are people that will get high-paying jobs. Now, if we don't make the ownership groups feel welcome in our province, there's a problem. I remember driving to another province, and on the sign it said, "We are welcome for business. We want your business." That's the statement that should go around the world when people think of Quebec, when they think of Montreal, that they want to see our companies grow. They want to welcome us in their province. And I don't feel that's the message right now.
Mike and I were actually we're having lunch with a very prominent figure in Montreal, a local business person who became extremely successful and extremely wealthy. And due to the nature of his business, he had to relocate down south. Just the fact that this person flat out told us he did not want to relocate, but the taxation system, the policies in place forced him and his family to relocate, was mind-boggling to me. The next comment that I heard, which again really stuck out to me, was, and I'll repeat, this is a gentleman who told us he wanted to stay here, was when you look at real estate, because that's really what we're into, real estate development, and we're very focused on Montreal, and for us, whether it be a return, an IRR, a project, we see it, Montreal, we could do it the best. And he flat out told us, he goes, "I agree with you, gentlemen." He goes, "But if I'm going to make, hypothetically, a 25% return in a project in Montreal, or a project somewhere else," he goes, "I would take the chance and do it somewhere else because of the unknown factors that continuously hit our province over the years." And that was scary. That to me is something that should not happen. This is a person who's invested a lot in Montreal's infrastructure that we know of. And he flat out told us he did not want to leave.
Yeah, that's a common denominator. We hear that so often. It saddens me, but we hear that a lot. People say, "I don't want to leave. I love it here." But the bureaucracy, the penalties, the complications, but I don't want to leave.
And that's people who are here, who are, we'll say, forced to go. Imagine all the other companies who are looking at their options from 30,000 feet, and then they look at Quebec or Canada, and they see the taxation, and they look at other countries. They think, what's the advantage of going to Canada? It may look great. There may be diversity in Quebec. It may have a European flavor. But if I'm going to leave a lot of money on the table, why don't I go somewhere else?
And they will come to Montreal. I mean, we're a major city. But will it be the presence that we should have, that we deserve to have? And that's what bothers me. It'll be like, here, we'll open a small office in Montreal. They have the employee pool. They have the talent. A wing. Why? Why do we get, excuse my language, the scraps? We are an amazing city. We are a great city. We have, exactly like Kristopher, you said, we have suburban areas, downtown areas. We're safe. We're green. Ease of access. The public transportation here is actually one of the best in the world.
The port.
We have all the markings to be one of the top cities in all of North America, and yet we get, the subsidiary offices.
There used to be like almost a think tank, by our elected officials and our leaders to say, okay, what do we do to bring the energy back? What do we do to bring that synergy back where it's not seen as complicated, but seen as it's an amazing place to do business. It's welcoming, it's diverse. It almost feels like when I think about it, I'm like, there needs to be some sort of forum, there needs to be some sort of reset. Because it wasn't always like that. You were talking about the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. It wasn't always like that. It seems like in the last 10, 15 years, there's something that needs to be reset to say we're open for business.
So you mentioned something before, Kristopher. We talk about the Formula One, where it's a one weekend event, and it seems like it's just getting worse and worse. On a personal level, that's what I see. Could you imagine our city, trying to host the Olympics, trying to host Expo 67? There was a vision once upon a time, before I'm born, that our city was major enough that it deserved that. Do you see anybody today saying that that's what we should be aiming for and striving for? That's sad. We should be striving for forget the Summer Olympics that we did, the Winter Olympics. We should be striving for a worldwide event like Expo 67. We barely could host an F1.
You're right. You're touching a really good point. It's true. Where are those voices? Where are those voices to really promote that kind of vision, to foster support for big projects, to bring in those visions? 100%.
I'm right here. I'm going to nominate one of those voices. My business partner right here, Mike, who's always been a very strong proponent of our city. Mike, you stayed relatively silent. Talk to us. Talk to us about what you see. You love the city.
Sam, you brought up a great point. I was thinking of what you just said. How can we vote ourselves in to say we're the next best place in the world to host the Winter Olympics? We can't. It was embarrassing to see the city during Grand Prix. The articles were all negative. There was nothing positive that came out about our city. That'd be from tourists, that'd be from local people, that'd be English, French, immigrants. Nobody had anything good to say about how we hosted this race. Why? Why couldn't we do a better job? It's not that it was just dropped upon us. We knew a year in advance what the date was going to be. We could have planned as a city to do better, to accommodate tourists, to accommodate traffic. We didn't. It was embarrassing, and we need to do a better job on all fronts. So I think we all need to get together here and roll up our sleeves and say, how do we make Montreal great again? Because we are an extremely great city with extremely great people, that'd be English, French, great immigrant population. We just need to step it up, and we're not here to bash anybody. To the opposite, I think we have great people, great leaders that could just do a better job if we take a step back and look at the wrongs we've done and how do we make them better.
Yeah, it's so true. The people are phenomenal in Montreal, and even with all those problems that we're having right now, you talk to people of the community, they love Montreal. I love my city. I love it. It's really rare you'll hear someone like Sam, you said earlier, I love my city, I love it, but I have to leave because there's too many risks for my business, for projects. But people genuinely love the town. So once you have that, the solutions will come. I just think there needs to be a global reset to say, okay, what we've done wrong in the last 10, 15 years or so, and how do we reset that with the passion that people have for Montreal, the residents and people that come from elsewhere, and how do we reset so that the business community sees that and says, okay, it's changed.
And by the way, all of what you're saying right now, guys, will correlate to real estate. And I'll tell you how. Very, very interestingly enough, right now, all of our projects, if you look at the downtown skyline, not that beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful skyline, but the buildings are all cookie cutter buildings. And you go to other major cities and you'll see obviously the same cookie cutters, and then you'll see, plopped in here and there, these incredible looking projects. These projects where, frankly, budget was not an issue. Why were they able to do that? Simply because there are people in those cities willing to spend the money, one, to build it, two, to actually buy these condominium complexes or rent in these offices. Nobody trusts that here in Montreal. To bring that back, you got to bring back the businesses. You got to bring back the people with money, the entities with money to come back. That's how you'll change the skyline, because we deserve beautiful projects.
And we have so many talented architects in Montreal. so many that are doing projects all over the world, and you read about them. You see these buildings in Vancouver. Oh, hey, that's an architect from Montreal. See projects in New York. Hey, that's that's a firm from Montreal. There's so much creativity and talent.
The project, my favorite one, near the casino habitat.
Yes.
Could you see that happening today? Very, very difficult for it to happen today. And why? That is sad. That is a beautiful project that's basically showcased around the world. I don't see it happening in today's economy and today's demographics. It should.
It should. Yeah, 100%.
As Rosefellow, we're going to keep doing what we do, which is voice our opinion. We are huge fans of our city, of our province. We got to bring business back. We got to bring that love for Montreal back on the international level, where companies feel welcome, where people feel welcome. And we can do that as a team. And when I say as a team, it's on a political front, it's as businesses, it's as people, it's down to the waitress in a restaurant and all the way up to the CEO of a business. Everybody can do their part to make Montreal great again. And we can do that. And I think we should.
One thing that I noticed that we've done is actually, without doing it consciously, subconsciously, we've actually been very strong proponents of how much we believe in Montreal. And we go outside and we tell people, you know how we build our buildings on spec. If you look at the general thought process of it, everybody tells us we're crazy. Montreal doesn't have the bandwidth. Montreal doesn't have the business. Montreal doesn't have the tenants. And we're going against the grain and saying, no, it does. Build these buildings. And we've been renting them. And we've been renting them at, market comparable rental rates. Our leasing is going good, and we'll continue doing that because we believe in our city. We believe that if, evidently the old adage, if you build it, they will come, but we believe that the businesses will rent these buildings. And for us, I don't think we're going to stop doing that.
Well, we're so passionate about what we do and for our city and our province. And that passion translates into working with people, finding solutions. Just this week, we had a meeting with Economic Development Montreal, and they were talking about initiatives they want to do in Montreal. And we're like, hey, we're on board. We love that stuff. And we started talking and brainstorming. They got ideas from us. We got ideas from them. That's what needs to happen. The private sector, the public sector has to come together. We got to work together. We got to find solutions. And that is the way we work. Right? That's the way we always work. We don't come in with the Rosefellow vision. We say, okay, how do we make the best project? And I think that's what we have to continue doing. And I think that has to spread at different levels in the province and in Montreal, to work in partnership with the private sector, the public sector, and the private sector to do that global reset and have a new vision, a new approach that Montreal is now open for business and facilitates economic growth.
We have the same motto that we preach internally, which is we never work in silos. We're always about brainstorming, and I think that's maybe a message we have to everyone listening. If there's people out there that be on a political level who have ideas how we can make this city better, we welcome them to come on our podcast and discuss that with us. Let's look at how we can do it together. Rosefellow is a team of 18 going on 20, but there's millions of people out there who may have ideas on what we can do to better our city together. Because I know, we're voicing 3 messages here, but the message I'm sure resonates with others, and we welcome opinions from others. On that note, we thank you all for tuning in to Rosefellow's podcast, and stay tuned for our next one. Thank you.